Welcome to our next Vue lesson. Just going to keep learning a few new JavaScript commands that started coming out around 2015. Pretty fundamental to realizing what's happening in Vue and some of these things. Again, you'll think Vue has all these extra features and it's really just laying on top of JavaScript. So let's get going real quick. I'm going to do the old CMD trick, get a command prompt up here and get myself out of your way. I'm going to change back, and I have, I think I called it Vue Lessons. I'm changing into a directory called Vue Lessons, and I'm just going to do Visual Studio Code from right there, code dot. So Visual Studio Code comes up, looks a lot like it did on our last one, and just getting things ready. I'm going to pop Chrome up again, and I'm going to go ahead and hit F12 and get my console ready to look at what we're doing. So the first thing, let's just go ahead right here on my main folder. I'm in Vue Lessons. I'm going to make a new index.html again, just something to have, and just so we can be sure it's working. H1 and say Vue Lesson again, and making sure I save. Once again, got bit as I was getting prepared. You don't save, it'll fool you. And of course, what do I need to do? Well, I've got to start serving that page up, don't I? And hopefully from our last lesson, we'll remember you can use ES6, tell it the path. I'm doing Vue Lessons this time. Notice that notation, /path, : and then the Windows path there. Port 80, free. Remember there's an icon down there now, but I now should be able to go. It is using port 8080, and I want to go right to the index.html this time to save a few seconds, and there we are. We've got a page up we can work with. And I want to do JavaScript stuff to demonstrate, so I'll get me a script tag here. And we wanted to quickly mention the let and the constant command. Newer in JavaScript, you've probably been seeing them, maybe hadn't paid a lot of attention. In the old days, of course, it was always var. I'd say var name equals Bob, and I could console.log my variable out, and let's see what happens here. Saving, refreshing real quick. Of course, I get Bob. What's interesting, I can go down here and say var the same thing equals Fred, and I can do it again, console.log the name, and let's see what happens. I'm refreshing, there's Fred, no problem. You want to var it up, go at it. But now that I've introduced, one of them is let. And let's say let first name equals Sam, and we'll of course go ahead and do a first name out there. I'm going to console.log first name, there's Sam. Watch this. Let me say let first name equals Sam again, and then try to, not even Sam, let's change his name, Tim maybe. So I'm trying another let, and I actually get an error. It's already been declared. So they're adding some features in JavaScript to try to help you not stomp over variables that already exist and things like that nature. The proper way, once you've already instantiated a variable, if you will, is just to reassign it, and it will let me reassign it, but not declare again with a let, if you will. Then constant, let's look at that. Let's say constant, whatever, factor equals 7. I'll console.log my factor, and see what happens here. I got my 7, as expected. Let's try constant declare again. Let's call it factor 8. I decided I want more later on, but a factor has already been declared. Yeah, we kind of expected that, seeing what happened with let even. But let's get rid of that. Let's say my constant factor has now become 8. Hey, you're trying to assign to a constant. You know, the whole point of a constant's not to change. So you have constants now and lets. Just be aware of that. Another new feature we want to look at in JavaScript in the last few years is called template literals or template strings, and you'll see like a backtick being used, which you've never seen before, and this has a lot to do with Vue templates and how they work. But let's say that I do have an object. Let's say I have a user object, and I have like a user.name equals Fred, just getting something up here, and I want to send a message out to that guy. I might let's try an alert out of this. Let's say alert with a backtick. Notice that right to the left of your one, there's a backtick key, and say hi, new user, and maybe I'll put with oops, I need a $sign. I need those squigglies, and I'll put user.name, and then I'll end with a backtick. And let me save that, and let's see what happens here. Again, notice backticks, not your normal quotes. I refresh, and it says, hi, new user, Fred. So we have this ability in JavaScript, newer versions, to interpolate in a string, if you will, replace values, a lot like the format feature in C# where you plug things in. You can throw error messages with that, and there's a million ways. That's literally what one guy wrote, how you can have tagged functions and call functions and replace strings. And again, this will be a little bit buried to you or hidden behind the scenes in Vue, but I'm sure that's how their templates are working. And you'll notice we have squigglies and mustaches in Vue when we get to that. And this is how the magic is happening. Another neat thing about these ticks is let's just write something out on the screen. Let me Control K C that. I'm commenting out real quick. I'm going to go ahead and hit OK, get rid of that message, and you can do multi-line stuff like let message equal with a backtick, and I can enter down and say hi there. I'm going to enter and say this is a form letter and more info, end with a special tick, and let's try console.log the message. Let's see what happens there. F5, boom, look at that. Remember in the old days this would have required /ns, carriage return characters, and now with these ticks, with these template literals, we can actually do these type things easier to do. So that's why you're seeing these ticks that you've never seen before in JavaScript. You know, something I ran into that was interesting here, we alerted up there, and one of the reasons I did that, in reading, the specs actually say in our web programs we should not be using alert or prompt or confirm. We see it in a lot of apps, at least in years gone by, and it was never meant for that. You use dialog boxes, form controls, you know, put content in divs, HTML things. So one step we can make to improve our programs is to not use prompts and confirms and alerts in our actual programs. It was never intended for that. You know, another thing that was introduced in the newer JavaScript is what's called an arrow function. And the notation is going to look something like this. You're going to have some parameters, an arrow or a fat arrow, and then usually you're going to have a bracket. But arrow functions, a lot of things to say, they don't have their own this. So they use the this of their scope. And that's one thing beautiful about it. If you've done much JavaScript programming, you'll maybe use the old trick where you have a this object and you're about to call another function, and maybe you'll declare big, tall, capital this equals little this, or that equals this. And then in the inner function, you would be able to reference that variable, which was really this variable. That can kind of disappear with arrow functions because it lets you reference, if you will, the parent this. That's one of the beautiful things of the arrow function. Kind of like a lambda expression that might kind of make that, you think of that from C# if you're familiar with lambda in C#. And in arrow functions, you don't need the word function or return. They are implied with an arrow function that you're going to have a function and that it's going to return something. So implied. I had a few examples here that I kind of thought up. Excuse me. they literally sometimes make a function as a constant, and the one I looked up, they were saying, hey, this is ES6 content, and you might say something like X and Y. See here, I'm going to have two parameters, and let's see here now. This constant, which is becoming a function, an arrow function, is literally going to give me the value X and Y. Let me try something here. And let's console.log multiply ES6. Let's go 5 and 4. Let's see what happens here. Yep, let's return him. Let's try him without that and see what happens here. It worked. So it can be that simple. See that I didn't have to do the squiggly brackets, just return what I wanted there. You know, now what's interesting, if I only wanted one thing, like if I only had one param, let me just say echo. If all I'm going to send is one param in, I don't even need the parentheses there. I can just say, give me back my X, and then I can console.log echo ES6, and I'll put whatever, 42 or a string. Having trouble here. Whoop. Yep, I lost one. Still lost one. So you can see, if you only have one parameter, you don't need it. Now, it doesn't hurt to put your parentheses. Let's see what happens here. Whoops. Return still work. Let's try putting return here. This should mess it up. I would need my squigglies. It ain't even telling you. We got a problem here. So if you literally have a simple one-line thing or formula, don't even need the brackets there. Just put the value out that you want. So you're going to see that with arrow functions. Okay, we want to look at one more thing before we end today's lesson. That was what's called a REST operator. It's pretty interesting. Let's say I have a function where I want to sum something. I can have as many parameters in that function as I want, and only the last one can be what's called this REST. And when you put 3 dots in front of it, it shows this is going to be the rest of the arguments. It's going to be an array. It's always an array. And say, I'm going to pass in some values here, and I want to sum in up. No matter how many I pass in, I want to sum them up. So I'm going to, as you know, there's several ways to iterate and do this, but I'm going to say var total equals 0 to use newer stuff. Let me say let total equal 0. For let x equal 0, x will be less than the vowels dot length, x plus plus. As I loop through that, I want to total plus equals vowels sub the next one. And when I'm done, I want to return the total. And I should be able to console.log the sum of whatever I want to put in there. As many numbers as you want. And let me see what happens here. I'm going to refresh. Boom, 19. 9 plus 7, 16 plus 3 is 19. That worked. Now again, it's called REST operator, and I might have parameters in front, and so it's going to take 1 to that A, and it's only going to do the rest, isn't it? So watch this. I hit save again, went down to 15. It plugged 4 in the first parameter, and only these last 3 went into vowels. 12 plus 3, 15. That's what we got. So the rest one is always the last one. It is an array, and there are many array functions in JavaScript. And, you know, we're trying to just build you up for Vue, so you'll have to check them yourself, learn these, but there's slice and pop and trying to remember some of the others. The map function, and I had a few wrote down here I was going to say to you, but can't find my note there. But slice, so array functions, many, but the new REST operator, which lets you pass many params in to an array at the end of a function. We'll continue in another lesson.